Alrighty, welcome back to my favorite part of the channel where I get to sit down with friends and colleagues who've cracked the code to elite business careers. In these conversations, we break down the exact moves that they made from college to MBA and beyond so you can run a similar play. Today is a very, very special guest, my brother Lorenzo Daniel, LJ. He was actually our commencement speaker for the Wharton MBA Class of 2025. This brother is special. LJ gives us a real deep dive of what it's like to really work and succeed at BCG. And he even talks about how even Wharton made the world smaller for him after going to Harvard for undergrad. It's a really rich conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Share it with somebody special. This is LJ's Playbook.
Don't confuse access for belonging.
Talk about your experience at Harvard.
Yeah, Harvard was cool. It was very fun, but it was hard. I think it was.
You're being humble. Like, you were that guy at BCG, right? Like, we heard about you before we met you at BCG. What do you think you did very well in those first 90 days? Or how much money were you making? Why did you want to go to business school? Why Wharton specifically, though?
It's the best business school in the world. Nah. Wharton was incredible. First, I mean, it was fun, man. I tell my parents all the time, it was the best 2 years of my life.
You ever wonder how people end up in money-making careers that run the modern economy? Some people stumble upon these life-changing opportunities, and some people find out when it's too late, if they ever find out, and neither should be the case. So we're putting the careers of the business landscape into perspective, one conversation at a time. LJ Daniel, what's up, my boy?
Nothing much, man. Happy to be here. How are you?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. Great day to have a great day.
It's always a great day, man. I'm glad to see you. I know it's been a minute, but hopefully everything's been smooth since graduation, man.
Man, graduation was amazing. Your speech was crazy, man. We appreciate you. Man, look, thank you for joining the conversation, bro. So, with these conversations, we really just want to democratize career information to communities who just wouldn't otherwise get that information. So with that being said, what are some key things about your upbringing that are important for us to understand who you are?
Family is the biggest thing for sure for me. I think just the values instilled from my parents, my grandparents, I think I come from a Christian background, and so I think faith played a lot of role in my upbringing, and not only, dreaming big and feeling as though I'm supported and everything happens for a reason, but I think just feeling like I'm a good person and feeling, not taking things for granted. So I think through every room I walk in, every opportunity that comes my way, I think there's a huge element of gratitude, just feeling grateful. And so I thank my parents for that, and my grandparents. Yeah. And so I think those are a couple of things about my upbringing that really kind of help, portray how I look at the world. Okay, awesome. And you're an athlete growing up, right? Athlete. So I guess I can't forget that. Yeah, both my parents were athletes, so that's a big part of me. Just their work ethic. I saw that from a very young age, and I think. I mean, I was running before I could walk, courtesy of my dad. So that played a huge role for sure. I can only imagine, bro. I'm not gonna lie, that's probably the most Texan answer that you could give, right? Like, sports, super Christian, right? And I mentioned it, and I'll keep mentioning it. The great country of Texas, right? All wrapped in one. But there's another part of your story that I want to bring out. Yeah, you were valedictorian material in high school, along with being an athlete. Did you always hyper focus on academics growing up? Like, what sparked that for you? I think it started, my mom, she homeschooled me when I was really young. Okay. So when I was really, really young, my little sister, we were very close. So I was attached to my little sister, and my mom would try and take me places without my little sister. I would start crying. I'd be whining. She'd try and drop me off at a daycare. I'd be crying, not because I wasn't with my mom, because I wasn't with my little sister. And so she homeschooled me because my little sister was too young to be in school, of course, and so it made me happy. Basically, I wasn't crying because I was at home. So my mom was like, "Okay, I'll just teach you." Yeah. So she started teaching me how to read. She started teaching me math, and so I think we approached education from a little bit different way, so that when I got to school, I was probably more advanced. I don't know. I think she was so much more one-on-one. I was more advanced probably than other kids, and so I think I just love math from a young age. I love spelling, and I would say my mom definitely had an education lens, just because of the way I think she started teaching me. And then my grandma was a teacher. So anytime I go to Georgia and spend time they had a farm out there, and so it's kind of like the community hub. So people everyone in the town would just come buy stuff from the farm, just say what's up, whatever.
Yeah.
My grandpa was the head farmer, but he also was the pastor in their area. So it was just kind of like the community home. And so anytime people would pull up, she would just be, boy, and she would have me come in and just start she would just have me read words, like read this word, like it was like a contest. Like I would just read, and then like her friends, or they would just clap, or like spell a word or something. So I think she had me reading a lot before I could play the PlayStation that she had. And so I think my grandma and my mom, definitely the women in my life, I would say, you know, put like an education lens for me coming up.
Man,
so
shout out to the women of the village, dog. That's awesome, bro. So all right, so boom, athlete growing up, high school athlete there, academics, valedictorian material, and then you decide to go to Harvard. Right. So the conversations in your home, was it always Ivy League? Was it like state school, HBCU? Talk about your journey to Harvard.
Yeah, that's a good, you know, kind of way to look at it. I think when you talk about like the conversations in my home, I would say, because it was interesting having a dad who, you know, one of the fastest men in the world, you know. So I think athletics meant a lot, but he was very like standoff, or like he wasn't super like domineering in terms of like, you need to do this, you need to run this, you need to go here. And so I think the college conversations, those kind of conversations, was kind of whatever we wanted. You know, if we wanted to go to school and run track, you could do it. If you didn't, you didn't have to, you know. So I think for me, it was, I did want to go to state school. I wanted to play ball. I wanted to hoop or run track at a high level. I think the injury, I broke my hip in high school. And I think that kind of changed my perspective, probably from like athlete to more, probably a little bit more balance. One, the uncertainty of, was I going to be able to compete again? Was I going to be able to compete at the same level? But then also just like, as I started getting older, I started to think about just different opportunities in life. I think having a dad who was at the pinnacle of track and field, you know, running with Nike, running around the world, and then to see him now, you know, still training kids and doing that. But I mean, he still has a regular job, you know, in more sales stuff. And so I think for me, I realized that the athletics was going to end at some point, you know, in some form or fashion. And I think that coupled with the injury made me think more about how could academics kind of play a role. And so I think as I kind of started looking at schools, I try to find a balance of like, where's somewhere that, you know, you can get a good education and you know, see different opportunities in this bubble from Texas that I was around, but also still compete at a high level. And I think the nature of a sport like track, where you don't need to be on like a Duke basketball team to be competing against the Kentuckys. Like, you know, you have Gabby Thomas's, you have Graham Blanks of the Harvard track and field world, you know, representing our country at the Olympics. And so you can do it from anywhere in track, which is super nice. Yeah,
man, that's awesome, bro. I want to applaud you for taking agency so early. And I'm sure your dad has something to do with that, but realizing that you don't have to put your whole career on athletics, and then taking ownership and making sure you can have it your way in a sense, right? You can go to a great school and, you know, dominate the business world and still compete, right? With that being said, how was your time at Harvard? Because I know, like, you know, I wasn't a Harvard athlete, right? But still, just D1 sports in general is very demanding. I can only imagine going to a school like Harvard and competing with the, you know, the who's was demanding. Sort of talk about your experience at Harvard.
Yeah, Harvard was cool. It was very fun, but it was hard. I think it was the first time kind of getting out of that shell from being from the South around my family. So going up Northeast, just very different. I mean, Boston, Cambridge, Massachusetts is a very different place than Texas. And so I think that comes with challenges. And it also was very different. Like you said, being a Division I student athlete is demanding. I think in high school, I played ball, and so I would go from basketball season to track. And so by the time I was starting track season, the meets were already started. So I didn't really do a proper off season in track. And then even our track workouts, you have hard workouts, but the competition's different. Sure, Texas track and field is probably the most, you know, up there with Florida. You know, it's one of the most competitive, but you're not working out 4 hours a day like you are in college. And so I think that was a big adjustment for me, going to a school or just being in a program where you're in the training room, you're on the track, you're in the weight room, you have a nutritionist, like you're watching what you're eating, you know, you're making sure you're doing everything you can to compete with the who's while still returning to the dining hall late at night, studying applied math, trying to figure it out. And so I think it was tough. It was very difficult, but I loved it. It changed my perspective on everything. I think I had to double down on the work ethic and time management, but more than anything, I just saw new opportunities. I think you got to, I was in class with the Malia Obamas, the Yara Shahidis, so people that I looked up to, going back to the woman in my life. And so I think people like that, and I think they changed my perspective on what's possible. And I think you're just able to meet a whole lot of people. I mean, just having people in my suite, in my blocking group that are from, different countries, different continents, it added a lot of perspective for me. So I appreciated it.
So when did you, because I'd imagine, like, even after breaking your hip, right, I imagine you still had options on where you could go to college. Obviously chose Harvard. When did you realize you made the right decision with choosing Harvard?
Toward the end of my freshman year, I lived across from my proctor. So she was like middle-aged woman, but she was like the residential proctor for my building.
Got you.
So toward the end of my first year, she asked me, she's like, what are you doing for the summer, like internship wise? And I was just I was like, I'm just trying to get to this week. Like at that time we're in season, I'm struggling. It was hard.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not really sure yet. I'm really I told her, I have no idea. She was like, I really think you should do this. I think you should look into this program. And it was a program that sends student athletes from the US to Vietnam.
Okay.
And in Vietnam, it was a program, it was centered around education and sport. So you're kind of teaching, coaching, mentoring, younger elementary up to like high school aged kids in Vietnam, where a lot of kids, education isn't the most prioritized because their economy is so focused on agriculture. A lot of kids' parents are farmers and they don't want their kids to go to school because they want them to work on the farm. And so the program was centered around kind of being, vessels of education to these kids. Okay. And that was, when she first told me, I was overwhelmed with the idea of, I never left the country. I didn't even have a passport. So applying for a passport to be able to go to Vietnam, a place that, candidly, I don't even know if a black person has ever entered Vietnam before. I was like, I don't even know where that is on the map. And that summer changed my life. It changed my perspective on just happiness. Those kids were by far the happiest kids I've ever come in contact with. And I mean, their homes were the size of this room, one room homes for 5-6 kids in the household and sleeping on top of each other. But they were so happy. It would rain every day and we'd be out in the rice fields running through, riding on the back of their bikes to their home. They wanted to show you, like, I want you to see my home. I want you to see my home. And you get there and it's one room, but they're just so happy. There's an attachment. And I think, I just think about going back to that gratitude piece and the things that we as Americans or, my family, anyone, my friends, we complain about, and to see kids with not as much, how happy they were. And so I think I just appreciated Harvard and, Leanne Gaffney, my proctor, for, changing my life with that type of experience. But then, Harvard, I think that was the first international experience or first kind of out-of-body experience, I think, that changed my perspective on life. And from there, it was being able to travel to England and Ireland, across the world, to compete against some of the best. And so I think it just, from there, opportunities just started stacking on top of each other. But I would say when I was in Vietnam, I was like, this is pretty cool. This ain't too bad.
Yeah. That would open anyone's mind. And you had that experience, 19, 20?
19, 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
And man, just listening to just the story here, right? Parents took some ownership in making sure you were academically astute, right? And then you had a tremendous village back in Georgia, you said.
Yeah.
Given all of that, what conversations do you think were missing in your home, in your upbringing, that maybe would have helped you with some of the blind spots that you still encountered on your journey to where you are now?
I think really just thinking about how to. My parents, when I was younger, they would tell me, save my money, save my money. I started working at TJ Maxx, so I was the first job I had.
Shout out TJ Maxx, man. Got us through some times, man. Come on now.
TJ Maxx. So they would just be save your money, which I think is a valuable lesson. And I think especially when you're younger, you need to hear that. And I think not necessarily the conversations that were missing, but I think the conversations that, I'll try to have with my kids is trying to think through how we can you know, think about different investments, you know, moving forward. You know, there's no reason for a kid not to have like a Roth IRA account when they're super young, especially once they have a job, their first job. You should have them with a Roth IRA. You should have them with a student credit card, whatever it is, just building credit in the background. And so I think probably more like thinking about, you know, giving them experience when they're young to, you know, spend money, lose money, earn money, all the things. And that will, I think, push the impetus toward generational wealth a little sooner. I think that's one thing that I would say I was a little bit more ignorant on, just in terms of how investing work and assets. And then I'd probably just say opportunities. What career, what jobs exist? You know, I think it's like not necessarily within my household or within the Black community, just, you know, in general, you know, and growing up, I knew I wanted to, partially because my dad was an athlete, I wanted to be an athlete, you know, and I think just trying to think through how we can have more conversations about the different types of jobs that exist. And I think that's why I'm appreciative of the Harvard, the BCG, the Wharton, because I mean, even I'm still learning about jobs from you all Wharton students this week about things I've never even heard of. So I think probably just those kind of opportunities and experiences.
First of all, what is BCG, right? And then when did consulting first hit your radar in undergrad?
In Boston Consulting Group. So BCG is one of the largest strategy consulting or management consulting firms in the world. And what that is it's truly just helping companies, organizations, whatever the client is, people, you know, be more efficient, whatever it is. You might be a school district and literacy rates might be declining and you need help, you know, boosting achievement rates. You might be a company, you might want to make more money. And so it's ultimately us coming in, understanding the problem, and then giving a recommendation on how to fix it, and then sometimes helping execute that problem. And so it's ultimately just helping people be better. So that's BCG, or consulting at large. And I first found out about it my freshman year. One of my teammates, Nicky Maxwell, he ran track. He's a few years older than me. He did a summer at BCG. Okay. And so then he pulled me over after a practice. I don't even know if he remembers this. After one practice, and he was like, "Yo, I think you would be like a really good consultant. Like, I think that like you just talk with different, because we have event groups in track. The team's 100-something people, but you have the sprinters, the distance, the jumpers. So he's like, I think you talk very well with like different, you know, whether it's the coaches, the distance people, you can get along with different people. He's like, I think you should try consulting out. And so I remember we chopped it up for like 45 minutes, and then I like Googled consulting or something, and then started watching videos, and that's kind of how I found out about it. So
how was recruiting for BCG?
It was tricky. I think I knew I wanted to, so at the time I wanted to be back in Dallas, so I just started trying to get in contact with people in Dallas at the, you know, BCG, McKinsey, Bain, and so forth. And I think I was fortunate. BCG did an on-campus BCG Dallas. They came to Harvard, actually. And so I got to meet someone. Her name is Roman Berhe, who's one of my biggest mentors now. But I met her, and she just started putting me in touch with people in the office to get to know them, understand their story, understand a little bit more about the job. And from there, started to practice like interviewing with people from the office. And so then when I was in the office for the interview, I just felt very supported by, I think she had a little bit more lens toward me talking with people from the Black community, just because it would be a similar experience, but even just an overwhelming amount of support I felt from the overall BCG Dallas office. And so I think that was kind of, when I think about my recruiting experience, I lean toward BCG, one, now because I work there, but also because there was just an overwhelming amount of support that I felt in helping make this process that can be very difficult for a lot of people, including myself. And I think they made it a lot easier for me. And so going back to that village, I thank her and everyone else there, because that's why I do a lot of case interviews now and try and help people, because I know how difficult it can be. So I get it.
So boom, the village is important, right? But real quick, everything up to this point of the video was free game. Just do me a favor, hit the like button, tell YouTube what we're doing, and let's get back to the content. If I'm listening to you, and I also want to recruit to get into a Bain, a BCG, a McKinsey, right? Or for BCG specifically, what do you think they're looking for?
I think they're looking for someone, you know, who just works hard, especially if I think there's a couple different ways you look at it. You enter a BCG, one of these consulting firms, either at an undergrad level or at an MBA level. I think at an undergrad level, likely don't have much work experience. So it's really going to come back to your work ethic. It's going to come back to how curious you are, what types of questions you answer, and then just your overall engagement and involvement on campus. So, are you a part of any clubs, any boards? I think a lot of consulting is working with people. I do think that people are, our greatest asset in a lot of different forms and facets, but definitely at a BCG or at a consulting firm. And so, just overall, what are your interpersonal skills like? And so I think being able to show in an interview, that level of personability, when I mock interview someone, the first question I'll ask myself after the interview is, would I feel comfortable leaving this person alone with a client? And so I think I don't care how good you are at math. It just comes down to how do you carry yourself, and so I think staying calm under pressure, I've had people who, including myself, who have messed up, and I studied math, who have messed up math in the interview, but it was just my interviewer told me, you made a mistake, but just, you were so calm, you weren't frantic about it. You were able to pivot and redirect and move forward. And so I think, there's going to be a lot of ambiguous, difficult problems on the job. And so I think they're looking for people who, work hard, can work well with people, but ultimately are pretty level and calm-headed, but also, at the end of the day, some people who are willing to, roll their sleeves up and get the job done. So I'd say those are kind of a couple of things that I would say they're looking for.
That's solid. You bring up something that I really want to foot stomp, because similar to you, I also, so if you don't know, I'm going to his competitor firm. Sorry, Roman. But in my interview as well, my final interview with the partner, I messed up the math like crazy. But during my feedback, it was a smooth mess up though. I messed up, caught the mistake. I didn't panic, barely blinked, and just kept it going, right? Even made him laugh after, right? So the vibe of someone, like you said, I want to work with this person, and yes, I can leave this person with a client. I really want to foot stomp that when you guys are preparing to interview for some of these firms. Yes, be good at math, right? But it's not the end of the world if you happen to mess up on an interview question. So thank you for highlighting that, bro. So with that, you mentioned you've cased a lot of people, and you're exposed to helping people recruit for these jobs. And part of that reason, again, you're being humble. You were that guy at BCG, right? We heard about you before we met you at BCG. What do you think you did very well in those first 90 days or so on the job at BCG, or maybe that first case to sort of solidify your reputation there?
I think the biggest thing was, your name just means a lot. I think I quickly realized these firms or BCG, performance is very subjective. It's hard to, sometimes there's probably maybe 20% of people are really, really good. And maybe 20% of people probably just find another job. It's just not always a great fit. But I'd say the 60-70% of people are in the middle, around the same type of performance level. I think I found myself somewhere in that middle, floating around. I thought I was kind of good. I don't think I really knew what I was doing until about a year in. But I'd say because performance is so subjective, I wanted to make sure I was the first one in, always, asking the right question, just asking questions, not even the right questions, just asking questions, being willing to be vulnerable. And then I think it goes back again to that gratitude bit around my upbringing, just being grateful for every experience and every opportunity, and, really thinking about relationships and not connections. I think at the job, mentorship, not even at the job, in life, but definitely at the job, mentorship has played a big role in my development over my career. And I think being willing to invest in those relationships, whether it's with my peers, the people I started with, whether it's with people writing my reviews, whether it's with the people who are stocking the fridge or the janitors. And I think that those kind of relationships made, a difference in just, how people talk about you when you're not there. You can only imagine that, those people are, hopefully allies are in your corner. And so I think those are some of the things, both just working hard, asking questions and being vulnerable, but then just investing in relationships and not connections. I'd say that was something that, I did the first 90 days in that first few months, but I still try to do today. So
let's do a little bit of sports talk, right? So what concepts or philosophies or mindsets, etc., from your journey as an athlete helped you be a top performer at BCG?
Work ethic is the first thing.
Yeah.
Is when I think about one, being a top performer, but just getting in the door. A lot of, and when I think about myself hiring people, you know, anytime you can see an athlete, anytime you can see a veteran, anytime you can see someone who's played or plays an instrument or speaks multiple languages, like things that take multiple years of investment, you know, not something you just pick up and you throw away a month later. Things that, you know, when you've had to work for it, when it's bigger than yourself, you know, when you're really tapped in over a long period of time. And so I'd say work ethic. That I told you, I've been running before I could walk since I was 3-4 years old. And so I think just that competitive edge at BCG helped. And then working on teams, even in a sport like track, which is probably more individual, I guess, than a lot of sports or more formal team sports. Just being able to work with a lot of different people, being on teams, having bad days. I think that's another thing about track is you can't hide. Yeah, you can't. I mean, it's the very clear. The time is the time, and so you're gonna have days where that time or the distance is you're feeling good, and some days when maybe you don't even need a time. Maybe I remember I anchored a 4x4. My boy Jaden Johnson, he was anchored, got the stick 5 meters behind me, finished 5 meters in front of me. It doesn't matter what the time is. Objectively, you were winning and you got beat. And so I think that can be tough. And I think when you've been through that and you felt the pressure in the high stakes environments, when you get into some of these boardrooms, talking with clients, you know, dealing with tough problems, you're able to level set, you're able to grind because you've been doing it for a long time, and then you're able to just work with people. And so I think work ethic, working with people, and then communicating. I think another thing, as I mentioned, so at school I was captain of our track team, and we had over 115 athletes from 6 continents. I don't even know how many countries. And so you're having to communicate, kind of like my boy Nikki was saying, you're able to communicate with different friend groups, different athletic groups, different event groups. And so I think that communication aspect as well of being an athlete, I think that also made a big impact in how I showed up in the workplace.
Okay, so it sounds like you were pretty prepared, right? Through athletics, through your journey at Harvard, even your journey to Harvard, you were prepared for BCG. But what was like something that surprised you? Maybe you didn't think it would be as hard at BCG.
Yeah, I first started working at BCG. I was a sophomore. I just finished my sophomore year in college. And that summer, I was traveling every week to Chicago. It was a very intense project. I mean, we were working directly with the C-suite. So twice a week, I would sit across the table from the CEO, the CFO, the CMO of a Fortune 500 company. So it blew my mind that I was even in a room with them. Because a lot of times, especially when you're more junior, you're not, just the nature of the project lent for a lot of responsibility. And so I think I was shocked at both how much was expected of me, but also just the amount of opportunities that existed within a place like BCG. I quickly saw how you were able to, depending on what your interests were, you're able to tap into a lot of different, you know, even local connections, you know, people. And for me, I was passionate about minority education. And so being able to, you know, work pro bono on projects in Dallas and just cultivating those relationships. And so I think at a young age, you're around people who are in their 40s, 50s that are, you know, they're doing a lot of things. And so I think it's really cool to be able to build those relationships. And I wasn't necessarily expecting that maybe at 20 years old. And so it's been really cool over the past 5 or so years to continue to build on those relationships and try and kind of bring more people into the fold as well. Nice.
I like it. So break down a day in your life as a consultant. Not necessarily a summer intern, but full-time after undergrad, a day in your life at BCG.
It truly, in true consulting fashion, it depends. But I think for me, I wanted to travel. So I was always on travel projects for the most part, which means Monday morning, for the most part, I was getting on a plane to my longest project. It was 10 months. I was in Miami every week. So Monday morning, I wake up out to Miami and I was out there till Thursday. I fly back on like the 4 p.m. Thursday afternoon and land around 7. And so basically in terms of week in the life, it was Monday through Thursday in Miami, working either out of the client site. So the company that we're working for they're headquartered in Miami. Okay. So that's why we were flying out there. a lot of times we had workshops, we had meetings, we had calls in person at the client office.
Got you.
So we would, go from the hotel to the client site. We're working there. We're working on the model. We're working on maybe it's focus groups. We're bringing in some of their customers and whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And if we're not at the client site, we would be at our BCG Miami office. So we'd be at our local office working as a team and so forth. In terms of the day, I mean, for me, we would go to Barry's, that project. We'd go to Barry's in the morning around 6:00, get back, shower, get a protein shake, head to the office. For me, it was a lot of that project, a lot of modeling. So I was doing a lot of financial modeling, trying to work on, for a little bit more context, we were redesigning a loyalty program. So I'm sure you're part of loyalty programs. You got the apps, you get the points. Yep. So for us, we were trying to re-envision, do customers care about these perks and benefits? Some of them they care about, some of them they don't. And so it was a lot of modeling in terms of, if we give this many, free amounts of things, will people redeem them at this rate? And so it was a lot of interviewing, a lot of surveys. So a lot of my day, would consist from about 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. some days, cutting the numbers, talking with the clients, or the head of loyalty, figuring out how do these different kind of perks, how do we think they'll work in the market? Right. Testing them, on actual, excursions with guests and things of that matter. So I'd say it's a lot of meetings. It just depends though, like the days between, like how much of it is me researching things, how much of it is me modeling things out in my own room, how much of it is like us sitting around a table talking about what we think will work. And so I think at the end of the day, it's like, you just got to be able to, one, work hard, ask the right questions, and then, be willing to come to the table with the clients and brainstorm different solutions.
That's dope. So in addition to the technical piece, like the modeling and all of that, you were also expected to have some sort of agency to like go do your own research and bring your own questions to the table. That's awesome. And having all of this experience, talking to the C-suites at the age of like 21-ish, that's 21, wild.
21 years old, man. I was doing a lot of really cool things.
Yeah, that's really, awesome, really cool, man. If you don't mind, how much money were you making? And I mean, they can Google this, but at that young, living in Texas, roughly how much were you bringing in?
Yeah, I was bringing in like right around 100,000 that first year, and then I think the base is 100,000. Then after the first year, it goes up to maybe 105 or 110, and then you have a bonus based on performance and stuff like that. So it might have been like $10,000 or something. So it was really cool. It was a really cool experience, man.
Good bread, good travels.
Good bread, good travel, just good experiences, man. I mean, it truly changed my life. Just being willing to see the world a different way and continue to show up, man. Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. Okay, so at that point, you were at BCG doing well, making great money, getting great exposure, right? C-suite exposure. And then you ultimately decide, hey, I want to go to business school. Why did you want to go to business school?
Yeah, for me, I think it was a really natural next step for me because as I mentioned, I'd studied math and psychology. But when I thought about, long term, I really wanted to whether start my own business, run my own business, manage or own a sports team. I felt as though I didn't have the business knowledge. So I think I really wanted to learn econ, learn, finance, accounting. And, the best place to do that would be one of the best business schools, if not the best business school in the world. So definitely the straight up knowledge that I would get from the classroom. I think on top of that, just the resources. I think being able to go to kind of, as we talked about earlier, a place like Harvard, just the alumni network, the career services office, the degree itself, the rooms that you can get into off the name alone. I think those were also reasons I felt as though, I could go back and learn business, but also be able to, have lunch or dinner with faculty members and, more than anything, probably learn from the classmates. I think through my journey, people are everything, being able to be around a lot of really cool people doing a lot of really cool stuff, and learn from them, whether it's people you want to learn from, whether it's people you want to start a business with, whether you want people to invest in your company. I felt as though it was a really good time for me to go back, challenge myself, and learn a lot more about the different opportunities that existed and trying to continue to make my world feel both bigger in terms of the opportunities that exist, but also smaller in terms of just knowing more people to help make the world a little more accessible. So,
I like it. Why Wharton specifically, though?
It's the best business school in the world. So yeah, for me, I was actually on the fence about business school, and I was thinking about going to business school. And then one of my friends, Josh Nyang, and he graduated Wharton class of 2024.
Shout out Josh.
Yeah, shout out Josh. That's my boy. We were at Katie Cho Ice House, and I remember he just got into Wharton, and he was going to be going, and he was like, I remember I was just congratulating him. He's like, "You're going to be here soon," or something. I was like, like, we'll see, But I'd always, I think, like, stayed close to him and just tried to, like, talk more about his experience. And I really appreciated talking with different students about, their experience. I really liked the fact that Wharton was very student-led. I think students have a lot of ways to, contribute to the, campus or the community in terms of recruiting and bringing in the next class of students. But then also, for me as someone who wants to be in the sports space, I felt as though when I was looking at different executives or sports managers or general managers, a lot of Wharton grads were in those spaces. And so I felt like really good opportunity to not only contribute, because it's such a student-led organization, tap in with the sports network. I think those are really good. And then lastly, as Josh and some of his buddies kind of told me, just like the Black community is very endearing and very supportive. And so I felt as though it was a really good blend of a lot of different personal career, and then at the end of the day, just like overall career growth development opportunities.
Okay. So now that you're on the other side, congrats, alum.
Yeah.
Congrats. Man, honestly, how was it, right? How was Wharton, and what surprised you about Wharton?
Wharton was incredible. First, I mean, it was fun, man. I tell my parents all the time, it was the best 2 years of my life. Just so much. I really feel as though like I've spent the last month now recovering, and just chilling and reflecting on the experience. But I truly feel as though I lived a decade's worth of experiences in that 2 years.
Wow.
And so I was able to, travel the world, and be able to, have access to different countries and rooms that I would have never even imagined.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, I was able to meet a lot of people and learn about, what makes them who they are. And I think that was just the most gratifying thing that I could take from the experience, is you're able to, people that I might not have agreed with on everything became some of my, best friends. And I think today it's so difficult. I know people are so quick to judge people based on certain things. And I think that, like, for me, unfortunately, I tore my ACL at the end of business school, and it was really cool seeing just like people show up for you. And, people check in on you, people make sure you're supported. And so I think that, like, whether it was the highest of highs or not necessarily the lowest of lows, but more challenging times, it was really, really cool to make and build relationships with people to support me. So I've really appreciated the time at Wharton, and just the ability to be able to find ways to add value. I think you can take a lot from a place like Wharton, these top business schools. You're constantly traveling, hopefully going to class, whatever it might be. But I think trying to find ways to contribute to this community, because you don't have to. I mean, obviously being class president, like, you gave a lot, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, all the things. And you understand, we could talk for 3 hours about how difficult that was, I'm sure. But I think for me, I grew a lot. I think you were forced to, it can be easy to go through Wharton or business school, just like head down, focused on what you want to focus on. But like, it takes a lot to be able to try and go out of your way, step out of your comfort zone, to meet different people, meet them where they're at. And so I think for me, it was a great next step of definitely personal, just trying to work on that personal growth. For sure, building relationships like this. I got a brother in you, but I got plenty of brothers and sisters that I was able to build throughout that process. And then at the end of the day, like, never hurts to go to a new city, learn a little bit more about Philadelphia, help out around the Boys and Girls Club with basketball stuff, and I think that kind of stuff's gratifying. So for me, whatever business, I think just continue to, I would recommend business school to anybody. I would recommend Wharton to anybody. Like, even if you don't, I've talked to people who would have never thought about applying to Wharton, and some people I've watched Tyler Jackson's videos on YouTube, and so I'm like, just try it, just see what, you never know what happens, just shoot. And so, it was a great time for me. I loved it.
Facts, bro. I agree. 2 of the best years of my life, man. Bro, 2 things. One, you spoke a lot about giving back to Wharton and contributing to Wharton. Bro, rest assured, you are top 5, like all of our favorite people, like for real at Wharton, bro. Good job. I mean that. You did your thing at Wharton, man. You really did. From contributing to whether it was hockey, basketball, blessing us with your commencement speech, just showing up, tutoring us, bro. Like, you did your thing at Wharton, bro. So I want to tell you good job.
I appreciate it.
And then
man.
Secondly, does that mean you're an Eagles fan now? You spent time in Philly.
Please, I could walk out the set right now, bro. Oh no, I can't do the Eagles. I'm sorry, man. I love Saquon, Jalen. Those are cool, but I can't jack the Eagles. No way, bro. I can't do it.
All right. I'm glad you're staying loyal because we don't. Yeah.
Nah. Go Cowboys. Right. Dakota Prescott, that's my boy. Yeah.
Ooh, next question. Yeah,
chill out. It's Mississippi State. That's where my parents went to school. You know,
that's true. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I've been rocking Dak since he was. Y'all forget he was a Heisman finalist. Had them number 1 in the country. But well, that's for another time.
Bro, you know what's crazy? And yes, we're about to go on a football tangent, bro. I get so tired of defending Dak to people who don't know football. It makes no sense.
They hear one headline, they run with it,
and they run with it, bro. Like they don't know ball.
They don't know ball.
Like they don't know ball. Bro. All right.
Sorry.
All right. Okay, so but in the same vein of sports though, right? You mentioned earlier how sports is important to you and sports played a big role in how you executed at BCG. Mm-hmm. And then even just in our conversation in passing, like I know that you want to have a hand in sports in some capacity. So how has Wharton helped you with that goal?
Wharton's been so paramount and instrumental in the person I was 2 years ago versus the person I am today in terms of connecting to the sports space. Wharton has been at the forefront. I would say a lot of people in the sports space, whether executives, general managers, went to Wharton. And so the world, once you're at a place like Wharton, I think the world becomes smaller for you. For me, I've appreciated being able to talk with, different alums in the space, whether it is managing clubs and teams or working at investment funds, at a small senior associate level, just being able to chop it up with them about their day-to-day, how they got there, about their journey. And then I think whether this was Wharton or more so just business school, having the time to intern. So I was able to work 2 different sports internships, both in the more investing / management side of things. And so just really cool being able to learn a lot about sports ownership, managing teams, having to displace or, trade players and their families and have difficult decisions, make those tough calls of should we, which player to sign and things of that sort. And so I think it's been life-changing just to be able to be around, one of the firms I work for. It's very small. There's 15 of us maybe total. And so it's really cool to have, again, going back to probably BCG, some of those access and opportunities conversations, just having access to people making some really cool decisions. I know right now we're in the plans of building a youth academy for players in Ghana. And so it's just really fulfilling stuff that has been things I wouldn't even say dreamt about. Not only I'm living the dream, but I'm, on calls with people, boots on the ground and I don't know if you know anything about on the continent, but business out there is zero urgency. So I'm just please, but it's fun, man. And so it's getting to do things that I mean, bring me more joy and fulfillment than I could have even ever imagined. And so I've appreciated Wharton, the alumni base, but also just the infrastructure that Wharton provides of, having access to these opportunities. It's been incredible. Man,
that's awesome, man. Yeah. That's awesome. So as we sort of land the plane again, this conversation is about democratizing information, right? So as we close here, what is one piece of advice that you want to leave people who either want to chart a path similar to you? Maybe they've heard this interview and they're inspired. Maybe they want to do sports. They want to do business school. They want to go to BCG. I suggest Bain. But what's one piece of advice that you want to leave people with?
I think the biggest thing I would say is don't confuse access for belonging.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is you're going to, at least for me, you're going to have access to a lot of different rooms, tables, opportunities, experiences that you didn't before. And just because you're in those spaces does not mean you have to give your whole self to be there. And I think sometimes you might feel pressured to abandon things you stand for. Sometimes you might feel pressured to behave behave a certain way to feel accepted in a certain space. And I think like the reason that you are at that table is because you're uniquely you, and you need to continue to show up as that. And I say you need to. I'm not going to say you should. I'm not going to say I want you to. You need to continue to show up as the person that you have been historically, because I think that that's what makes the joy of, who you are and why you're in the room. And so I think it's going to be tough, though. I think there's been a lot of times and a lot of people that I've seen, you're being asked sometimes, or you feel as though you have to compromise who you are. And so I think like the recipe is you. And so I think that like just continue to refine that. You don't necessarily have to change it, but the more you can remember why you're doing it, I think for me, like it has to be bigger than yourself.
Yeah, man.
Because if you're only thinking about yourself, you'll abandon who you are to be in a new room, and the next day you'll change who you are to be in another room.
Yeah.
But when you have whether it's a village, whether you have a family, whether you have mentors or mentees depending on you or that believe in you, and you kind of find solace and you find joy in doing it for them as well. Man. At least for me, I'm more inclined to stick to who I am and be proud doing it. It's like that's what makes it fun. Like no one can take that away from you. And so I think that like that would be my advice, is continue to don't confuse access for belonging. And then lastly, the last thing I would say would be like whatever your dreams are in the world, I was gonna say like if you get to Wharton, but even without Wharton, like dream bigger. And I think like for me, like whatever it was, like you'll quickly realize like as you get into new rooms, like you might, I don't know, there's just so much out there. So just like whatever it is you think you want to do in the world, like, and you might not be the most like overly ambitious person, so maybe you want to go do that. But if you have high ambitions, like just continue to keep pushing and go get it, and you'll be shocked at like how probably quick you can get as close as you can to fulfilling those. So
the recipe is you.
Recipe is you, man.
And dream big. LJ, I appreciate you, dog.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
For sure.
Appreciate you putting this together. Of course, always. Cool.